is Eleni Dripper. I am a hypnotherapist and a regression therapist, and I'm going to tell you what that means, and I'm going to give you examples of clients I've worked with and how the sessions have affected them. Some of the therapies that I offer are quite spiritual in nature, and some of them less so. We're going to start with hypnotherapy because that's in a way the most straightforward modality. Perhaps most of you have heard of it or perhaps have had a session. I personally define hypnosis as your own decision to focus on your inner experience. I don't see it as something that I'm doing to you. You're not my subject. I can't make you reveal your PIN code or anything like that, because if I were to try, you would just wake up and say, what are you doing? So it's not like what you see on the stage hypnosis. It feels, generally for most people when they come with me, it just feels when you're in hypnosis that your body is really nice and relaxed. Your thoughts are still there. It's not like you're lying there as a zombie and you can't move and you don't remember. Your thoughts are still there. Some people, even myself, they might say, it didn't work because I remembered to get milk on the way. But that doesn't mean it's not working. Generally, you will just feel your body lovely and relaxed. You might feel an itch in your nose, but you just can't be bothered to scratch it because you're just so comfortable. So it feels really, really nice. And I tend to use it for people a lot for changing behaviors, like stop smoking, certain elements of weight loss, like for example, we can create an aversion to chocolate. That's a more sort of old school of hypnosis. We can make people stop craving and stop wanting to eat so much salt, stuff like that we can do. We can use it for nail biting, seasickness, assertiveness. There's many different applications. We can even use it for creating a hypnogastric band, so that people have all the weight loss benefits of having an actual gastric band, but they don't have to go into hospital. They come and see me 2 or 3 times and they will have the same effects, but they don't have to spend lots of money on surgery. They're not exposed to hospital bugs. They don't have to have the operation. And when they're done with it, we can just give them the suggestion that it dissolves, so they don't have to have it removed or anything like that. It's really good for phobias, simple phobias. Things like fear of spiders, fear of heights. If you were to say, which some people do, they say, I've got a fear of having something around my neck and nothing's ever happened to me, or I'm really terrified of water and I don't know why, then it makes more sense to find out why rather than just working on the symptoms. But we'll cover that later. It's really good for pain relief. I had a lady who was having a tattoo on her back enlarged, and we can give suggestions that, for example, you numb one hand and you really feel that very cold, very numb, and then you move that hand to wherever the pain is, and then you can transfer that numbness to the area that you want to numb. It's really good for headaches. I do that myself. When I have a headache, I listen to something and the headache just goes. So it's really effective for lots of different things, really. I use it for dealing with symptoms. If we want to know why, then it's really regression therapy. A few examples of people that I've worked with. There was a gentleman who worked on cruise ships, and he was about to go off on a few-month trip to the Mediterranean, to the States, but he had lots of seasickness. So he came to see me and we did some work, and he's now happily going off. He's not seasick anymore. He said every now and then if you feel a little pang, then he quickly does whatever he does and it's sorted. I had another lady, she used to be a dental nurse, and a few years before she had some treatment, but something went wrong in the treatment. She said it felt to her like the dentist had sort of lost control. I think it was an extraction or filling or something went wrong, but she felt the dentist panic, and that made her panic. So I worked with her a couple of sessions. We worked on erasing the fear. There's different techniques for that, and sorted it out for her. The dentist was really impressed with her that she was able to be so calm, and worked really well. Another funny thing, there's something called inner conflicts, and there's a man called Charles Tebbets. He did some research in it, and he said on an average week we all have between 5 and 15 different hats. Like at the moment I'm wearing my therapist hat. Tonight with my kids I'll be having my mum hat or my friend hat or whatever. And these different hats, they're like different parts of ourselves. And we might say, oh, I really want to lose weight, but somehow I can't. So there might be a part of us that is sabotaging it, or like, I really want to quit smoking, but I just can't seem to get there. Now, one really nice example, excuse me, that wasn't me, but it was one of my colleagues. She worked with an executive who was overweight, and he wanted to lose weight, but he just couldn't get there. And they found out by doing parts therapy that the part of him that was keeping him overweight was a part that wanted to save his marriage, because his secretary at work fancied him and had made that clear. And I guess he figured by staying nice and round that would then keep his wife or the secretary, nothing would happen. So by bringing that out into the open, he was able to then say to the secretary, look, it's purely professional. And then, everything worked out and he was able to lose the weight. So that's just a lovely, lovely example. I think that's really quick, but I think that's all I was going to say about hypnosis, unless there's any questions about hypnosis from anybody.
Are there some people that can't be hypnotised?
Yeah, good one. I don't believe so. I think that's one of the myths in the media, like, oh, I wonder if I can be hypnotised or not. I think for some people it's just a little bit easier. Some people take to it straight away. Lots of people fall asleep on the first session with me. Some people don't, and it's fine. I think it's more, you're on a scale. Some people it's really easy. Other people, it might just be a little bit more difficult. But the way I tend to work is people come and see me and I record the session. And I say, please listen to it as often as you can until you come and see me again, ideally once a day. Because by the time you've listened to the whole story again, you know what I'm going to say. When you then listen to it at home with an earphone or whatever, before you go to bed, it just helps you sleep. You know what I'm going to say, so you don't have to pay attention, but it really helps for it to go in. And when you're in your own bed, in your own environment, you're just likely to relax a little bit deeper. So I think I've met one or two people that were really struggling, but usually it's just a question of practicing a little bit more if you're just less susceptible.
So does it wear off then if you don't listen to your tape?
It depends. I must say I did the chocolate one for myself, and that's a little bit mean. As I said, it's a little bit old school because it just creates an aversion. It's not as nasty as some of the other ones I've heard about, and that definitely worked for a while. And then the chocolate sort of crept in again for a little while. But for other things, I've done one on myself for salt, and that's been permanent. So it just really depends on whether there's a little bit deeper work that's also needed, whether there's perhaps secondary gains, like with the man with the weight loss. It really depends. But yeah, I've certainly had people with permanent results. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions?
Is that to do with willpower then? Is that something different entirely?
No, I sometimes show this one. So we've got the conscious mind that's there at the top. And we've got the subconscious mind. Conscious mind, that's where the willpower is. That's where I'm going to stop smoking. I'm not going to do it. I'm only going to have 2 crackers today, whatever. But that's only like 10%. It's this 90% that we work with. Like, for example, so this 90%, this is where all the long-term memory, everything that's happened to us is stored here. And it gets translated into beliefs. For example, a little kid in school that was bullied might sort of, because of that, form the idea, I better not speak up in groups because if I do, I get bullied. Now, had that happened to me, it hasn't, but had it happened to me, that would not have been very useful for me right now, because right now it's important for my job that I speak up and talk to people. So in hypnosis, we address this. Like, for example, with smoking, that's another good example. Researchers found out that people that smoke, they see themselves as a smoker. I am a smoker. I'm not, but I am a smoker. I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm a smoker. And because that is part of this, they see themselves as that, as part of their identity. We work on this part so they see themselves as a healthy person who likes to breathe in fresh air, or they see themselves as a person who can exercise well or whatever. So we work on this bit. And the willpower, that's just this 10%. Some people can lose weight, can stop smoking with just the willpower. But by involving this other large part, it just works so much more quickly, I think, and effectively. So it's just more helpful. Yeah. Any other questions? No, all right. So we move on then to regression therapy. I said before, for some things, it makes sense to look at the deeper reason. So things like, I had a lady, I'll tell you about her in a minute, she was scared of trees and she didn't know why. A colleague of mine had a businesswoman who couldn't stand having doors closed. So, you know, when there was a meeting, the door had to be open. In the car, she was struggling because then the doors were closed. So it is for things like that, when people call me and they say, oh, I'm scared of this, that and the other, and I don't know why, then I tend to go to regression therapy. And before I go any further, I should warn you, because some of the stories I'm going to tell are going to be a little bit gruesome. They say regression therapists are often sort of experts in torture and in yucky stuff. People do awful things to each other. But at least I get to see that and experience that, but at least they come out of my office smiling. My dad was saying, I can't understand how you do the work that you do, but I feel, yes, people are experiencing horrible things, but after that, they overcome their problem, so it's a happy ending, I think. So why would people want to do regression therapy? So the way we see it, when trauma occurs, and trauma is often like a quite a laden word, but for a little 2-year-old, mummy leaving the room could be a trauma because a little girl or boy doesn't know maybe that mummy's coming back. So when trauma occurs and we can't deal with it, so for example, the soldiers in the trenches, they can't deal with it because life's got to move on, we tend to just hide it away. We anaesthetize ourselves for it and we just forget about it. It's still there, but we sort of forgot about it. And then later on, that can still get triggered. So somebody that has been bullied or whatever, if later on in life somebody's is yelling at them or being really authoritative, they sort of freeze and they become that 5-year-old again and they don't know what to do. So it's like spontaneous regression, and regression can be really quick. People often think that, I'm going to access a past life, so I need to be really deep in hypnosis, but it's not like that. It can be really, sometimes we use a bit of hypnosis, but it can be really, really quick to access those memories. So if there's been trauma, it's been squirreled away, we sort of conveniently forgotten about it, but it can crop up when you're triggered, and it can also show itself in the body as a disease, dis-ease. So chronic fatigue, headaches, migraines, IBS. So for that, I consider regression therapy, it's good emotional housekeeping because it just keeps yourself healthy. It also means you're not crop dusting your emotions to your family. So doesn't only help yourself, it helps your family, because I think it just makes you a nicer person to be around when you sort of deal with your own emotional stuff. So all regression is you go back to an earlier state. If you come to me for regression therapy, so I also do journeys. If people are just curious, they can just sort of dip into a life that's a positive life that's useful for them. But if we go to regression therapy, then we go back to the source of the problem. And by healing the source, we heal the symptoms as well. And because we take a really wide viewpoint, regression therapy is often successful where other therapies fail. If you go to the GP, they're just going to look with what they're seeing now, whereas I take current life, past life, all of that into account. So my scope, my lens is far wider. So I've brought along my banner here. Lots of famous people. I must say, most of the people I speak to in the session are soldiers, caveman, witches, maids, servants. I haven't met any of those people yet. I've met a few princes and a few kings, I think. But when we experience it, I never ask for names or what country are you in, what date is it, anything like that. Because if a past life comes up, we don't do that to prove reincarnation or to prove that actually this happened. Some people see it as it's a story that their brain came up for them to learn and for them to heal. So I personally believe that it's real and we have lived here before, but it doesn't matter. Even some of my colleagues don't believe that, and it's fine. You can just see it as a metaphor, something that your brain came up with. And when I facilitate the sessions, my questions are always really open. I might say to you, so are you inside or are you outside? Are you alone or is there somebody with you? Are you a man or a woman? I don't plant any memories in your head. If I were to say, oh, what's that scary man doing to you now? That would be sort of leading. So we avoid all that. And this trance also is quite a lot more active than a trance in hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy, you're just lovely and relaxed, and I'm sitting there next to you talking. But when we do regression therapy, you'll be able to talk to me. And I want you to experience the story that emerges in an associated way. You're going to be there. You're going to feel it. And that, to me, makes it, if people say, well, is this actually real? The strength of the emotions, that for me makes it real. They know. They feel, yes, it was my dad, it was whatever. They feel, and that strength, and the richness of the detail that some people come up with. I mean, some people, if they're visual in nature, they might have like a full Hollywood experience. I'm not one of those people. I don't tend to see very much unless I do a session for somebody else. But there's always that knowing. Some people, some clients are able to say, yes, I've got the shoes and I've got this hat and whatever it is. Other people, they just know. They know that, yes, they're lying on the couch with me, I'm sitting next to them, but they also know that they're in the forest or whatever it is. So it's a real knowing. And I think that's also one of the benefits of regression therapy, the way I do it, because I know sometimes other people can give you information, like you go to a psychic or whatever, and they say, oh yes, you were married to this man before, or yes, your son in this life was your cousin in the other life. But if you haven't felt that, if that doesn't resonate with what you're going through in your life now, it might not be so useful. It might even be a little bit confusing. Whereas in the sessions with me, you're going to feel it. And it's the fact that it comes up means it's relevant for you now. So I personally find that an easier way to get information like that. Now, when you come to me for regression therapy, I often say, if you were to come to me as a friend, I would be very different. Not that I'm a different person or anything, but if you come and say, oh, I feel really sad, I would say, oh, it's all right, I'll make you a cup of tea and I'll be all right, give you a hug and all that. But when I'm a regression therapist, I would do the opposite. Instead of pushing it down, which we often do in society, like I said, we push the trauma away because we don't really want to deal with it. I would say, what's the worst thing about it for you? And sometimes I have to be a little bit mean to get you where you need to be. But it's only brief, and after that we're going to transform it. Because I'm sure you understand, I don't just get you to experience a story. Okay, yes, you're a soldier and you were killed, blah, blah. After that we transform it so we get all the learning. So what I ask you to do, it can be quite difficult for people, because some people are so used to pushing it down. If you imagine like a beach ball in the pool, pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down. But what I'm asking you is actually, no, let it come up. And that can be deep catharsis. Catharsis, all it is just healing. I had a lady she was pretty much housebound, grossly overweight. And in this current life, she'd lost one of her children. And there was medical issues and all that. And she was just ranting and raving. About 45 minutes, she just had to go and so much stuff coming out of it. And I think that was just 1 or 2 sessions with her. She's now studying university. She's lost loads of weight. She's running workshops and stuff. So it just needed to come out. So sometimes it's people needing frequent loo breaks or laughing or crying or whatever it is. It's that energy just needs to come out. In the beginning, when you start the session and we're sort of getting into the experience, it can feel a little bit odd. And it's still, for me, I've obviously done loads and loads of sessions as a client as well. It feels really odd because you're lying there, as I said, but you also know there's a forest around you or whatever. And I always ask people, just go with that, because by acknowledging what it is, whether you see an image or you feel something, that will open other experiences to also come. Like I had a gentleman and I said, look at your feet, or I can't remember what I said. And he says, I can't see anything, but I feel like I'm moving. I said, okay, so you're moving, so let's go with that. Feel that movement. Oh, I'm hearing seagulls. Okay, moving, seagulls. Oh, I see a boat. And because of that, the picture just get bigger. So he was a sailor. But that's how the story came to him, and that's how it started. I had another one, and so it's okay. So where are you? I'm standing in the middle of a road. Okay. And are you carrying anything in your hand? Yes, I've got a rope in my hand. And on the other hand of the rope is a cow. So, okay, so standing on the road with a cow. Okay. But we went with it. And actually the cow was really important for the story because he was a farmer's son, I think, in the past life. And he had to take the cow along the village, and people would come with their bottles and their receptacles to get the milk. And there was a widow in the village who he really liked, and he didn't want to get the penny from her because she didn't have much money, blah, blah, blah. So by just going with the first thing that you notice, it's really important, and that will allow you, if you were to then say, no, there's no cow, no, I'm lying on this, but nothing will happen. You have to allow yourself to be moved and to go with it. So in the beginning, when we do the regression, when we get the life, we're just detectives. As soon as we get the story, the cow on the road and whatever it is, we're not trying to analyze everything yet. We're just getting the story. And so we explore, we usually in one session, we tend to explore one life in great detail. Sometimes we bring in another life if we need a resource or whatever, but it tends to be one life. And so we explore the life. After that, I always take people through the death point. And it's nothing to fear. It's the most authentic experience you will ever get of it. It's not scary, it's not horrible. Because by going through the death point, we get to the spirit realms, and that's where all the magic happens. Because that's where we get to talk to the perpetrators, we get to be reunited with our loved ones, we get to understand, we finish unfinished business. I also, if it's necessary, do body therapy. If there's a severe physical trauma in another life, sometimes that trauma is still held by the body, and sometimes that energy just needs to come out, whether it's kicking, running away, pushing something away, or whatever it is. And that I do that as well, and just to show how dense the body is and how some things are just still held in the body. This was actually during my training. We had a past life with somebody, and in that past life she was beheaded. But the knife was blunt, the blade was blunt, and had to do it twice. And after the session came out, she had 2 lines here on her neck. They didn't hurt, and they disappeared the day after, but that's just to show the body still remembered what that was like. And again, another gory warning. I've had people, and they were soldiers at the battlefield, and they were blown up. So it's like, okay, just scan your body, and my arm is missing. Okay, go find your arm, put it back on. Just check. Oh no, my big toe. Okay, go get your big toe. And sometimes, but just for the body to have all of its bits back energetically is just really important. So I also do ancestral healing if it's necessary. That will come up in one of the other stories. And sometimes we are reunited with pets, which is really, really lovely. So I'll tell you now about a few of the case studies that I worked with. One of my favourite ones is, again, some of it isn't very nice, but it has a good ending. Oh, by the way, if anybody does feel triggered by any of the stories that I'm saying, please come and talk to me after, or give me a ring or whatever, and I will help you through it. Yeah. So this lady came to me, and she had a fear of trees. She was about my age, had kids. And she said, lately it was fear of forests, I think. Lately, she said, it's been getting worse because now it's just trees in general. And every time I go to the supermarket, she had to go through a forest, I think. So it's like locking the doors, and oh my God, if we now get into breakdown, then I have to leave the car, and all of that. So we went to the source. Again, I don't know whether it's current life or past life. I just say, okay, go to the source. The source with her was in a past life in which she was a young girl, and she was walking in the forest, going to grandma or whatever, and she was raped in the forest. So you might think, okay, that's it. She's scared of trees because she was raped in the forest. But it wasn't. She actually ended up becoming pregnant because of the rape. So she has the baby. Mum walks in after she's had the baby. Oh my God, your father is never to hear about this. Mum takes the baby and puts her in takes it away for adoption or whatever. So the rest of the lady's life is quite okay. She marries a nice man, becomes pregnant again. And then she thinks, okay, I guess the baby's going to be taken away because that's what happens with babies. But this baby was not taken away. And mum was nice to this baby. Okay, rest of the life, has another baby. And it's like, oh, well, that baby, but that was a boy and that baby was a girl, so maybe this one. But again, no, this baby was not taken away. Rest of her life was fine, all, nothing really major happening. So in the transformation, we first of all went to talk to mum. I think he said, why did you take my baby away? He was like, in that time, all the shame on the family, we couldn't have that and all of that. So we get the understanding with mum. We talked to the spirit of the baby, and she was able to hold her baby again. We found out what happened to the baby. And it turned out mum had taken her, I think, to a big mansion or something, and the lady of the mansion had taken in the baby and looked after the baby as if it was her own. So the baby was okay, and they were able to express love and be together again. And then we talked to Dad and say, Dad, I had a baby. Talk to the husband, I had a baby. So the whole I had a baby somehow was so much more important than being raped. We talked to the perpetrator, the rapist, saying this is not acceptable, this is not how you treat women, blah, blah, blah. And that was just the one single session. And she's on the island. She's now been to Robin Hill or the Magic Enchanted Woods and everything, totally clear of her fear. I thought that's a really nice example how, yes, it was a horrible event, and yes, the client re-experiences that again for a few moments, but then the outcome is so worth it. Another really amazing, this was one of my colleagues who had this, was about the executive businesswoman who couldn't cope with doors being closed. And this was a current life event that they ended up going back to. It turned out that she was 3 or 4 or whatever, and it was her day to go to nursery or childminder, and she really liked the childminder. Mum was nice, childminder was nice, everything was lovely. Except on that day, when they were getting ready to go to the childminder, she really needed to go to the loo. But Mum was running late and stuff, so she, just wait, just go with the childminders. So, they go there, they get there. I think the childminder, I guess, had to discuss something with Mum or whatever, so said, you just wait there, honey, and I'll close the door on her. But by then, she really needed to go, so she wet herself. Mum and the childminder, said whatever they had to say. The childminder comes back and not meaning to be horrible. She poor, okay. So stripped her off, but then didn't put new knickers on her. So poor thing, she was just walking around in a bare bottom for a few hours with all the other children, and she felt just so ashamed. So in the transformation, I think they put some knickers on her, talked to Mum, talked to the childminder, got the understanding, and that just changed everything for her. She's now able to close the doors, and so that link was broken of close the door, that means I'm going to be shamed. So again, I think that's just a really lovely example of how powerful it can be. Sometimes we need a few more sessions, but sometimes it's just one session, that's all it takes. So regression therapy is useful for, or is suitable for most people. I would say it's not suitable for children, obviously. It's not suitable for people with serious mental illness, serious OCD, severe OCD, people with dissociative identity disorder, and people with psychosis. People have to be able to distinguish between real and not real. And it's also not suitable for people with heart conditions because they might experience intense emotions, and that's not good. But for people like that, we can do what we call proxy sessions. And that I've done several myself as a client for somebody else, and I've obviously facilitated them as well. And when we do proxy sessions, if, for example, Dana's dad wanted a session, but he couldn't do it, then Dana could come and visit me. And she would take on the energy of her dad. And I know it sounds a bit odd, but it does work. And it's just a question of, we ask permission. If the end client is able to give conscious permission, we ask them. And if it's a child, we ask the mother, or we ask the pendulum, have we got permission from everybody involved? And then it works just like that. I would say, Dana, you are now your dad. Tell me what it is you're feeling or whatever. And it works really, really well. And a really lovely example of one of those sessions was I did for a family member. And it's about this kid who couldn't hurry. Every time he really had to hurry up and they had to go somewhere, he got really stressed. So we ended up going to a past life in which during the birth, there was some lack of oxygen, or he had the umbilical cord around his neck. And because of that, he just, I think at the time they thought it was asthma or something, but he was just a bit short of breath. They thought he was a little bit slow, but he wasn't. But he had several brothers and sisters, was a busy family and stuff, so the parents, I guess, were not the most understanding. It's like, oh, come on, hurry up, we need to... And that was just too much for him. So he went to Grandma often. Grandma was lovely. Grandma took the time and read with him and all of that. And he had a cat, a therapy cat, Timmy. And oh my God, this cat, he was just still so, I still get emotional. He was just so lovely. And also, the funny thing, in this life, this kid's really into cats. So it's lovely to see that connection. Sometimes that just gets brought back. So he had Timmy, had Grandma, made it through school, eventually ended up being a lung doctor and helping other people with that. So in the transformation, we talked to Mum and Dad and all of that, talked to Grandma, and just created that understanding. And I think because of that understanding, what it came from, the problem just disappeared. I mean, the whole, that just disappeared. It just took the heat out of it. And that's often what it does. I've had facilitate another session for an adult lady who did a session for her daughter who couldn't come. And I can't really remember the details, but the byproduct was that later on, she said I think the perpetrator or the baddie in the past life was the son in that life. And she said, oh, my daughter came to visit me. Oh, and my son came as well. And he just started washing her car without her being asked, whereas normally he would never ever do that, but that was like a week after the session. So the healing does filter through to the end client. Another nice one to mention is I did a session for somebody, for a child who's really lots of anger issues and stuff. And funnily enough, in the past life, anger didn't come up so much. It was a life in which he grew up, again, I think there's complications at the birth, so he was either handicapped or some physical thing was wrong with him, I can't remember. And but he was, the son of a king or a prince or an important person. He had, a beautiful house, nannies, people looking after him and stuff, beautiful gardens. And but he couldn't enjoy it because he was so focused on, I can't do this and I can't do that. And in the transformation, what came out of it, what was for him the light bulb moment, said, well, I didn't have to be focused on the handicap. Had I just focused on the other lovely things I had, yes, my dad was often working, but I had lovely nannies, I had a beautiful house. My whole focus could have been so different. And I suggested to him and to the mum to do a gratitude journal. Because integration is really important. Getting the learning and the understanding in the session, that can be tremendously helpful, but it's also important to carry it through. And she's been in touch with me and she said his focus is much improved, just focusing on the positive rather than, this is all negative. So sometimes you think, I guess we're going to be really angry in the session. No, it's not always like that. It can, what comes up can surprise you. Yeah, I mean, I've got many more, I've got a few more case studies, but before I go any further, any questions about what I've said so far? Is it all clear? Sort of, yeah. Okay, good.
Just one question.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Carry on.
Oh, okay. Well, mine's sort of sideways of what you said,
Yeah.
actually. And when you said about that poor man in the trenches that
Yeah.
kept losing his bits of body and things like that, it was
Yeah.
important to get it back again. These new laws about organ donation are coming out where, what do you feel about that? Because I'm always a bit of can you die without your heart if someone else has got it? And would that affect you in the next life?
That's a really good question. I would tend to think if there's something so big as I'm receiving your heart, I would imagine there's probably an agreement between you and I before we're born.
Right.
And I think it would be lovely to do a session with, and then indeed to get that agreement. But I think with awareness, you can overcome a lot by really being aware, by being grateful, by talking to your body and saying, okay, the heart that's here at the moment doesn't work. We need somebody else's new heart, and this person is, and being really aware. I think that can change a lot. But I think in that case there will have been an agreement.
Right.
Between the people.
Surely there would be some kind of understanding of the donor, because that donor would have agreed
Sure.
prior to death.
Yeah.
that they're happy to part with
Yeah.
that particular organ.
Yeah.
Whereas, the way I'm processing it is when the guy gets blown up in the trenches, he didn't give an agreement to that.
No.
And he loses limbs or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you actually choose to donate your
Yeah.
organs because you feel that's the right thing
Yeah,
for
you choose
you,
consciously by filling in the
Yeah.
donor codicil.
so there is an agreement to
Yes,
begin with.
very much
perhaps,
so.
You know,
Yeah.
So it wouldn't really affect you in your next life, maybe, without a heart. So even though I've agreed to it in this life, say, then if I come back as somebody else in the next life, because I've given my heart away in the previous life.
No, if
I'm
need
sorry,
be, we
it's
can.
just-
No. If need be, we can energetically retrieve it and say, okay,
right.
at that time, you very kindly gave to this person. Now this person has died as well. It's 400 years ago. She doesn't need it anymore. Let's go and get it back. And it sounds really simple, but you can do it like that.
So if it affects you in the next life,
Yeah,
it's
you would just
something
feel that there's something's missing. Oh, my heart's not there.
Yeah.
So we get it back and put it back in.
Yeah. Thank you.
You had a question?
Yeah, you were saying that the mother could come and do a session, say,
Yeah.
for the child. Can a grandmother do it?
Sure. If we tend to say if there's a deep love connection.
Yeah.
So a mother, a sister, a brother, somebody
Okay.
that knows the person. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And this isn't so much a question as just to know where we're going. Are you going to be talking about the in-between?
Yes, I will. Yes. I've got a few more examples if you guys are interested. It's really interesting. Sometimes I see different people for the same issue, and it's amazing to see how different the sessions are. Like I had a session with two ladies for infertility, and the first one was this lady had had an abortion in the current life, and so we went back. I think we went back to another life she had with the soul that she had aborted in the current life. And what we found out was that often this soul preferred to be in the spirit realms. She'd been on earth, she'd had lives, but never was very old. So they were together, but they didn't live very long together. The child often died young. And the advice she gave my client was, don't feel that you're failing. You are a mother. You are my mother. Yes, I'm not here on earth with you, but you are a mother. And stop beating yourself up. And she is now 4 months pregnant. So that's lovely. Another client, also with infertility, she was one of those people that had amazing, rich detail in what she was describing to me. We went back to a life which she had an abusive husband. So her husband beat her up one time and had taken, don't know why, we didn't actually find out, taken one of her shoes. She managed to run away from the situation, from the abuse, and I think in the marketplace somebody helped her or dealt with her wounds or whatever. So after a while she got back home, kids sort of helped her, fed her, and then she went to bed and had a really long sleep. The kids, I can't remember how old they were, but the kids were starting to get worried for her because mum kept sleeping, so they went out to get help. But whilst they were out, the ex-husband, the abusive husband, kidnapped the kids. Mum wakes up, oh my God, where's the kids? Freaks out, can't find them, so goes out, and then while she's frantically looking for them with the one shoe, because she can't remember fully what happened, so she's worried about her shoe, where's my kids? And then all of a sudden they're not here anymore, they're gone. So she had a knowing, and really her whole world came crashing down. No more hope. Oh my God, my kids are all I have, single mum, what am I going to do? So luckily she was helped by some friends. They took her in, looked after her and all of that. And I think it was like a year later where the policeman came round and said, yes, they found the bodies of the children, but they've only recently died. So she went to identify the little bodies. Said, I can see the pigtails, I can see her little dress, all of that, still so distraught. Luckily, she met another lovely man, lovely husband, and had another baby at age of 47. She called her miracle baby. And she obviously saw one of the scenes where on the mantelpiece she had a picture of her son and her daughter that were murdered and kidnapped. And then she saw herself putting a picture of her miracle baby in between those pictures. So she died as a happy old woman with holding her daughter's hand. And in the transformation, she reunited with her kids again. She talked to the husband and she said to the husband, I am not those things. because he had been saying, oh, you're worthless, you're stupid, you're whatever. And she said, no, I am not those things. I am worth whatever. We found out from Spirit Guide, because we use Spirit Guides quite a lot, found out that he felt all of those things about himself, but he'd just been projecting them onto her and pouring all of that self-hatred into her. And Spirit Guide said the anxiety of what can go wrong is still with you, and it gets in the way with what can go right. So the Spirit Guide was saying to her, don't give up hope, you're still young, it's not too late. And I'm not sure whether she's expecting again, but it's again 2 people for the same issue, accepting childlessness, and the sessions can be so different. I had another lovely, that again was a very detailed one. Somebody came to see me, as a gentleman, for confidence, self-esteem, and we looked at a few scenes in the current life in which he felt guilty towards his sister. I think she'd been in an accident, and because of that her parents had to give her lots of attention and stuff. And it was a lovely moment in the transformation, because she said, oh, well, who's on the therapy bed now? I was always the one, but now you're the one crying and doing all of that. And we went to a past life for him in which he was like a pot maker, and he was a young teenager, and he ran away from the village. He was fed up and stuff. But quite quickly after that, he found out, well, actually, I've got no means to support myself. I haven't got any useful rocks or tools or anything. So I think he ended up eating some poisonous berries. Either he did that or he fell and hurt himself, I can't remember. But he was found by some people, they nursed him back to health and stuff. They were quite loving, although they did make fun of him a little bit, like, that was really silly of you to run away like that. And then after a few years, I think he went back to the village, and he found his mum, but she was sort of lying on the ground, and he was trying to pick her up and say, Mum, are you okay? But then some other villagers came, and they sort of pushed him away and said, oh, go. And they found out the mum had died. Either she was already dead or she died soon after. But all the villagers blamed him. They said, if you had been quicker, if you'd not done whatever. So they all blamed him, and he was shamed in the village, and he was just a bad person from that day onwards. So in the transformation, he sort of said, oh, the one time I was independent, straight away I failed miserably. So that was the idea he had. Because in the current life, he said, I just can't seem to make a decision. I can't get things done. My family's frustrated with me because I need to hang up the cabinets, I need to do this, and I just can't seem to do anything. So there was this idea, if I take the initiative, it's not going to work. What was lovely in his session is the shame. We asked the spirit guide, and the spirit guide said, it's not just your shame, it's ancestral shame as well. It's shame that you carried from all of your forefathers. And the way the spirit guide showed him that, they showed him a barn full of straw. And the spirit guide said, each bit of straw is an event, a strand. Each strand of a straw represents an event that caused shame, and it's just built up. And then Spirit Guide said, I want you to set fire to that barn, but keep one strand to remind yourself, don't let it build up. Keep hold of a little bit, but don't let it build up. So he set fire to the barn, and he was really joyous, and he was laughing, and all that just energy release. He had to go to the toilet like 3 or 4 times during that session. It's all just release, isn't it? It's that beach ball that you're pressing down, and now it can come out. So he was really joyous, and he was laughing. Oh, the fire was fabulous. And then after the fire burned down, he said, oh, it's now snow, and it's really like a virtual landscape, and I can make my own prints, and oh, it's just fabulous. So in his visual representation, it just changed for him. And yeah, now he feels much lighter and brighter. He sells his own artwork, I believe, and he's just doing fabulously. And again, that was one of those in just one single session who made a really big difference. I've got one more, a really gory one, if you want to hear it, and then I'm going to move to Between Lives. Are we up for a really gory one, or would we skip that one?
We're up for it.
We're up for it? Okay. This was one, and the lady had told me, I think she said she had a fear of anything around her neck, so I was prepared. It's probably not going to be very nice, and I told her that. or it could be, and I think she also said that the film Roots, where people are branded, she couldn't stand that. So we ended up in a life, she thinks South America somewhere, happy childhood, connection with the earth, everything hunky-dory, but was captured as a teenager with many others. They were branded, they were made to walk a long way, others were captured, and they weren't allowed to talk to each other. So, and they were walking a long, long way. So the new people that came anyway spoke different dialects, so she didn't understand what was going on. And she also said later on that's a recurrent theme in her dreams in the current life, that she's just confused and doesn't understand what's going on. Then at one point she sees in the past life, she sees a man on a horse with feathers and a mask, and he was the boss, the guy that decided it all. So after they were walking, or they got to their destination, they had to clear forests and do lots of heavy lifting with rocks, and eventually he snaps, he can't take it anymore, so he runs away thinking, I'm probably going to get caught, but I just want to feel that freedom of the forest. And indeed he was caught, was made an example of. Here comes a gory bit. He was garroted, which I learned later on. It's like you're nearly suffocated, but they don't finish you off entirely. It's just nearly. And then afterwards, his stomach was split open, arms and legs cut off and kicked off the podium. So that was just one of the most gory ones I've ever had. What came out of that, though, for her, is that it was a life about connection. And it turned out that she had actually chosen, and this is a theme that I come across quite often, when something is so cruel, so it's like, why would this happen? People might even say, if there is a God, why would something like this happen to a person? Who makes that up? It's horrible. And very often it's the people themselves. I chose to have a really intense experience, so the experience would stay with me. So she had chosen a really intense, extreme experience, so that would stay with her. And she says, now I'm a lot kinder to myself. For when I think I failed, I'm kind to myself, I'm kinder to others. I've had an experience where that was just a snippet, that was in a between life session, in the pre-session, where I was like on a bed, and there was something with my head. I think they were stretching it out, or there was something going on there. And in the transformation, my therapist was saying, well, why did you choose this experience? I wanted to learn, I wanted to feel what it felt like to receive cruelty. Because very often, the way I see it, the way we learn our lessons, and the way I see karma, it's not like, okay, I'm killing you this life, so you're going to kill me next life. It's more like you're learning about a certain theme and you're seeing it from different viewpoints. So in that life, I guess I had decided to learn about cruelty by receiving it. And then we talked, as we always do, to the perpetrator, the people that did that to me. And it turned out that the perpetrators, they were actually part of my soul family. And they had pleaded with me, are you sure you want to have this experience? It's going to be horrible. I said, yes. Okay, and they loved me so much. They wanted to be there. They were horrible in the past life. They tortured me and all of that. But they were part of my soul family. They were helping me to give me the lesson that I had asked for myself. And I think when you see it like that we're not victims. It may feel like that sometimes, but ultimately it's us, I think, who decide. Sure, we've got a lot of help. Our spirit guides, our elders, and all of them, they will help. But ultimately, I think it's us. And indeed, I know from personal experience, things when we decide to come into a life, we say, oh yeah, sure, that's great. Oh yeah, learn all about cruelty. Oh, great. Actually doing it in the flesh, it's not so easy. So sometimes...
You can't do revenge ones then.
Unless you've chosen to experience that, yeah?
Yeah. It sounds a bit like you're choosing to experience all emotions.
Yes. Yeah, because another life, I didn't do any further work on that, but I might have chosen to inflict cruelty on somebody else, or to witness cruelty, or to know about cruelty and not do anything about it, or to be a corrupt politician or whatever. So I believe you're just learning.
Can you imagine choosing to be one of those?
Yeah.
But I guess also the lesson is there because you've chosen that weird emotion, or it seems weird to us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that you can then grow in empathy
Absolutely.
and compassion in
Yeah.
your next.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. By really knowing what that feels like, you can then maybe never do that again.
Yeah.
Or feel compassion for somebody who has experienced it, or whatever. Yeah. So between life, spiritual regression. One of the pioneers is Michael Newton. I've brought some of his books. I trained with Andy Tomlinson, and he studied with Michael Newton, and many of his methods are very similar. But there have been thousands of those sessions all around the world, and they say many of the experiences that people have are very similar. Not similar in the way that they have the same content, but they discover that people, after they die, or in the time between their lives, they visit the same, we can call them stations. They have they visit the same station. I guess that's the best way of explaining. So the way I do a between life spiritual regression, it's a series of 2 sessions. In the prep session, the preparation session, we first will start by inducing really deep hypnosis. Because unlike for normal regression, you don't need to be so deep. It can be really quick. But in order to access those really deep spiritual memories, you need to be really deep. So like on the scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like you're almost asleep, it's like a 9 or a 10. So really deep. So you make sure that the client is able to achieve that depth. And then I ask the client, there's ways of finding out what needs to happen for you to have the optimal between life experience. And sometimes it's a few current life events, or it's a few past life bits. It could be a little bit of energy work. I also do that. Or it can be some inner child work. And I think that's one other thing we checked. I can't remember. So whatever it is we need to do, we do that on the prep session. And then after that, we wrap you up in a lovely sort of energetic bubble, so you stay in that lovely zone. And then often, like the next day or the day after, you come and see me for the actual between life regression. That's 4 hours. It doesn't feel like 4 hours because you're just in a lovely, lovely state. So it goes really quick. So when we do the actual session, we start by taking you back to your last life before you were born again now as Dana, as Anya. And we do that, we just do the positive bits of that life. If there's anything traumatic, we skip over it, because the reason why we start with the last past life is it's like a runway, we're taxiing, we're just getting you in that zone, just a few little highlights, a few positive bits from that life, and then we go through the death, and then basically we stay with you. So, as I said, there's several stations. Most people will be met at their death by a guide or a loved one. They receive healing. They shed sort of the layers of the earthly life. They receive new energy, new healing. They meet with their soul group. They meet with the council of elders. Sometimes they have a choice of circumstances or different lives that they're going to have for that next incarnation. And then they join the baby of their mother. You join your mother, join yourself, how do I say that? Join yourself as a baby in the current life. And I also offer my clients opportunity to ask any questions. We call that in the eternal now. So you can ask anything about specific significance of certain objects, your relationships, why do I feel drawn to the other white, why did I marry that man, why did I have the car accident, anything about an illness, any question you can ask. So it's amazing. So and this I'll need to refer to my notes more, because these experiences are far more sort of spiritual in nature. And also I need to say, people tend to come to me for between life spiritual regression, not so much because they have an issue that they want to resolve, but they want to receive information, they've got questions. They want to experience themselves as a soul, because that's what you do. So it's not because there's something going on in the life now, it's because they just want information. And the sessions are they're really visceral, they stay with you for your whole life. They're amazing. If I could just do those, I would. They're just fantastic. So I remember in my training, I took my client through the last past life, and then, okay, so tell me what happens now. Your heart stopped beating. Tell me what happens. First thing she said, oh, that's better. So that, not that I was nervous about, but that really put me at ease. Honestly, it's lovely to die. And I don't have a death wish or anything, but there's nothing horrible about it because it's lovely where you're going. So I had another lady, and she said, I'm floating up, I'm seeing my body below me, and I go higher and higher, and then I feel a pull, it's like a vacuum, and then she's in amongst the stars, and she feels free, she can breathe again, and she's happy, and she's shooting up like a rocket and all of that. I've got somebody else who said, oh, I died, and I'm seeing a hand, or she's aware of a hand, and she asked to be picked up, and then this man takes her to a healing place, and she said, oh, it's like being inside an iceberg, but it's not cold, and this man is just pouring water over my head and healing my energy and telling me well done and all that. I had another lady who said, after she crossed over, she said, oh, I'm walking in this meadow, and there's a stream, I'm going to lie in the stream, and I see the stars, but the sky is getting lighter and lighter. And another lady said, oh, it's like, after she died, it's like popping, like when you have the bubble wrap, or like fireworks, sparklers going on. And then she said, oh, I'm seeing purple, and I'm just shooting up. So it's lovely. It's a lovely experience. So after that initial crossing over, most people, if they haven't met the spirit guide at the moment of crossing over, they will meet their spirit guide, and they might have a past life review right there and then. Or, as we've already seen, for some people, they sort of feel like they're sort of shedding the layers of that old life, shedding that earthly energy, or they receive new, higher vibrational energy. One example of that was for the lady who had the popping and the purple. She said, it's like I'm in a pool, and it's like I'm in the pool. I'm like one with the water, and I'm sort of zooming through the water. And then after that, she said, oh, my guide is there, and they're putting a robe around me, so like a bathrobe. So it's like getting rid of that old energy and receiving the new energy. And somebody described it, that was meeting with the spirit guide. She said, oh, I'm in a big room, it's like a library, and my guide, he looks like an older man in a burgundy suit with a white shirt, vest, and grey-brown cravat from the 19th century with white hair. How specific can you get? And she said, oh, he's really pleasant, and he showed me my past life on a big screen, and then they discuss it and said, oh, why did you do that? Why did you not do that? Whatever. There's somebody said, oh, I'm surrounded by the stars, and it's just lovely and quiet. Somebody else was describing an energy alcove where she was just getting healing. So again, it's really individual, but when clients describe what they're experiencing, I know, oh, okay, they're doing the past life review, or oh, this is where they are, they're in a place of healing, or whatever. Then the third station most people go, sometimes it's not in that same order, but generally it's that order. Then most people meet their soul group, and what I found, what most people have found, most people have between 5 and 20 members of their soul group. Some of them you may be traveling with in this life, some of them you may not recognize, but there's between 5 and 20, and that is generally described as a color. So they say, oh, they're the same color as me, so then I know, okay, they're in the same soul group. Oh, they're different colors. And some people say, oh, they're my people. Some people, or one other lady had 2 different soul groups. She said, oh, I'm working with this group now, but they're all sort of different colors from me. I've got another group, but I've just chosen, I think the issue was sexuality, so just chosen to be with this group for a few lives, just to work on that theme, and then later on I'll go back to my original soul group. Somebody else saying, oh, I'm finding myself a lovely color pink, and I can hear singing, and the lights are just coming all around me, and it's just happy and lovely. And that was her reuniting with her soul group again. Then most people also meet wise ones or meet elders. And one person described it as, it's a really big, bright room, and there's lots of glass windows, and my guide is hugging me, and he's talking to me and telling me, why did you do this and why did you not do that, and just reviewing with her and talking with her. Somebody else described, she said, I'm this orange horizon, and I see the curvature of the earth, and then she sees this her guide. She's like a tall warrior woman, and she's really magnificent. And then so we meet the elder, the woman, and she gives her a symbol, I think it was, for something. And they have a conversation and find out what that life was about, what she was learning. There was another really nice one. She says, "Oh yeah, I see a big temple." So I know, okay, so they're likely to go and meet with their council. It's a temple, but I really don't want to go in because it all looks so serious. So we just hang out on the steps for a bit and just sort of, almost like have a cigarette because we don't want to go in. And then eventually they do go in, and then they found, to their relief, actually it was just like a lovely, like a yoga room with like whitewashed walls and just these different coloured lights sitting like on the floor, and it's all really relaxed, and they all talk to her in turn about different elements, or they reflect different elements of herself. So again, you see everybody's experience is really different, but they have things in common that, they're with the wise ones, they're having healing, whatever. And then one of the next steps is reincarnation. So their soul joins again the spirit of the baby. And that generally, it depends on the time the baby can decide. And it's like once the baby's in, it doesn't mean that they stay in. They can still go out. And it ranges from conception, insemination, from that moment to just before the birth. And it's up to the baby. I've heard one of my clients say, "Oh yeah, I'm right there because I want to get to know my mum and I want to bond with her and feel what it feels like." To somebody else saying, "Oh, about 4 months because that's when I knew that the pregnancy was definitely happening and everything was viable and all that." And another lady saying, "I came in like 8.5 or just like a week before I was born because that's when the time when mum decided, oh, actually, I guess I'm going to have to go through with this. I'm okay with this now." And that's when she chose to merge with the body of the baby. As I said, we have the opportunity to ask questions in the Eternal Now. I've said what sort of questions you can ask. And there's some people also have like sort of extracurricular activities. Like somebody had like a lesson with another guy. They went off and had their little moment. And this was a lady that was struggling with being overweight. And the guide said to her, she said, you feel that you need more mass to you, but and he didn't say it in a nasty way or anything, but you've mistakenly created width rather than pulling yourself up. If you want to be bigger, if you're scared, what do most people do? They go like that, don't they? They just... But when they do that, they're small. So in order to compensate for that, they gain weight. If you just pull yourself up, then you're not afraid. Try it sometime. Next time, if you feel scared, be aware that you're doing that. If you pull up like that, you're much less afraid. And one other lovely one to end with. One of my clients got the spirit guides in the Between Life Spiritual Regression. She got a gift. I sometimes say, "Why have they got a gift?" Because that can be lovely. And she, "Oh, they're giving me a banana," which means don't take yourself too seriously. That for her was a symbol, like you see on the cartoons, people tripping over a banana peel. So it can be really light-hearted, and they can tease and have fun with you and stuff. So any questions?
I have.
Yeah,
Sorry.
lots of questions.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
What happens to people who have a horrible death, who get killed or hanged or cut their head off
Yeah.
During their passing? Do they also come into this beautiful world, or?
Yes. If I were to have a between life spiritual regression with them, and they're saying, "Oh, it's going to be horrible," or I take them through that bit really quickly, because otherwise they get, and that's not to sound disrespect, but otherwise they get caught up in that drama of, "Oh, they're killing me," and then that's not a good start of the between life. I say, "Okay, just move beyond the time and now just tell me what happens." Whereas in a normal regression therapy, we would go through that and we would get the learning. Why did that happen to you? Talk to the people that did that to you and all of that. So it's a little bit different. Yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah.
I'm an only twin.
Okay. Ooh.
My mother was in a bad car crash and my twin died.
Yeah.
And I survived.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Gosh.
Her name was Angela Margaret. She lived for 3 hours.
Gosh. I would tend to think that there was an agreement I don't know if anybody is familiar with Dolores Cannon.
Yeah.
It might be interesting for you to read that. And I do believe that. I believe there probably was an agreement with that soul, between that soul and you and your mum, that that's what was going to happen. And there will have been a reason for it. Maybe it was learning to love someone and then let them go, or maybe there was some other learning. But gosh, that's...
Ironically, I was in an almost identical car crash.
Wow,
Woman took me to
okay.
the crash barrier at 50, coming up the motorway.
Okay, and you lived to tell the tale, and you're...
Yeah, 2 broken ribs, broken knee, broken wrist.
Gosh, yeah.
Cut out the car.
Yeah, gosh.
Yeah.
So that could be really interesting, or that if you do a between lives, you could ask what was the reason for that?
Is there a chance of meeting the twin?
Yes,
Some
absolutely,
regression,
absolutely, yeah.
Feels weird. Sometimes I can feel her with me.
I bet.
I know.
No, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, you're such a in a close physical connection. People say, twins have got a really intense bond. But absolutely, yeah, we in a between life regression or in a normal regression, talk to the twin. Yeah, find out what happened there. Absolutely.
Yeah, because she lived for 3 hours, so she was born.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
that's
and
all.
then had to go. Gosh.
Perhaps she was a new soul.
Could be.
Just experiencing, testing the
It
waters.
could, yeah, and I mean, there's this concept, some new souls, old souls. The fact that they're a new soul on Earth doesn't necessarily mean that they are a new soul. Maybe they've had a lot
They're
of
just
other lives in
testing.
other dimensions, because that's another element. Some, my between lives training, I did my practice with another lovely lady from Scotland, and we were there. I think there was 8 of us, and we were the only human. It's laying to about human origin souls. All of the others had many other lives in other dimensions, which is not to say they didn't have any earthly lives, but their soul just tended to be more in other dimensions. So maybe indeed it could be there was a new soul here on Earth. Doesn't necessarily mean you're totally, it can mean, doesn't necessarily mean you're totally new. And the between life sessions for non-human souls, I mean, sounds a bit odd, they tend to follow a little bit of a different pattern. They tend to be much more around, it's much more sort of business-like. It's like they have a mission. They meet with their leader. They often say, oh, I'm going in a spaceship or on a steam train or anything like that, and they're taken to their leader. And it's much more, this is what you came here to do, this is your job, you do it. Rather than, it's my choice and understanding, all of that. It tends to be a little bit more business-like. So they're very different, those sessions.
Is it sometimes, I've been led to believe, all a soul needs to do is touch the earth and leave, because that's all they need to do and all they need to learn. And then they leave us with the legacy of how we deal with it.
Could be, yeah, could well be. Again, if that's something that you agreed beforehand, like, I
Yeah.
really want to learn what it's like to
Yeah.
lose a twin.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, your twin might be part of your soul group, who's like the life I was saying with the cruelty. They might have just said, okay, I'll help you. I love you so much that I will help you with that. Yeah.
Is it possible, and it sounds a bit ironic, but is it possible that the soul just bottles out at the last minute and says, I don't want to do this.
Yes, could be. Could
I've
be.
made a decision up there,
Yeah.
but now I've changed my mind,
Yeah.
I'm going back.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. I've had a lady who had made, because I believe we choose our parents. This lady, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. This was in a regression therapy. This is what I'm going to have that mum, have that dad, because I want to learn this and that and the other, and it's going to be great. And then she was in the womb, and the realization hit her, oh my God, I'm going to be born with these people. And it wasn't pretty. She was kicking and just wanted to inflict pain on the mother, because she realised it was actually, she had decided it herself. But yeah, so there's sometimes a bit of a discrepancy between, yeah, that sounds like a really good plan, and then actually having to do it in real life. Yeah.
If we make this choice, why are we not conscious of the choice?
Yeah, well, you can be in the session. You can be made conscious of the choice.
I think just in
Yeah.
life, why are we not conscious that we're here for that purpose?
Yeah, I don't know. It could be one of those things like if we sort of, it's probably one of those where if you were given an exam and you sort of looked at the answers beforehand, rather
You
than
would do it.
actually doing it with all the temptations and all the difficult stuff because I'm doing my learning, you're doing your learning, you're doing your learning, and learning whatever you need to learn in those circumstances, not realizing what it is so much more difficult. I've heard of sometimes in the planning of the life, when people choose their own circumstances. I've heard of, I think that was in one of Newton's books, he said there's meetings where they say, okay, so in this life it's going to be really important that she travels to Africa. I'm just giving an example. So how are we going to make sure that happens? So sometimes it happens that they say, okay, so she's going to watch that movie when she's 14, or she's going to meet this person from Kenya who's going to really inspire her, just to make sure that really important event takes place for her. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
And the way I understand it spiritually is if we came in knowing, we wouldn't be having the experience, would we? If we already knew or understood what was going to happen, then there's not a lesson to be learned. The whole idea is, and as you touched on earlier, when you want to learn a new emotion, maybe it's being cruel to other people or receiving cruelty, just to understand that. And if you knew before you started, you're going to
this like loss or that tolerance,
Or if you knew that on this day you were going to get up and you were going to go out and have a terrible accident and you were going to be paralysed, would you get out of bed that day?
Yeah.
Or ever.
Do you see this planet as a...
you had a question as well, John, didn't you? We'll come to you next, that's all right.
Yeah. Something you were touching on a little while ago, and it's something that, a question I wonder about. The number of people alive on the planet at the moment is sort of 8 or 9 billion.
Yeah.
As I understand it, the number of people in recorded history that's lived and died up to this point in time is less than that number.
Yeah.
So, I think some of what you were saying helps explain that, and some of it is energetic beings, and some might be star beings or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those two numbers?
Yeah, I believe there's a lot more possible than we in our 3D limited mind can understand. I think souls can split and say, okay, you're doing this, you're doing that. I believe when we come here on Earth, there's part of me that's here now in the 3D, but there's also still a part of me that's still learning.
Yeah.
I'm pointing up, it's not up, but over
By
there.
itself, you mean?
Yeah. I believe generally when we've started incarnating as a human, I believe we stay human, but that's not to say if I really wanted to be a dog next time, if I ask my spirit, I believe that's probably possible.
That's a good idea.
I've had a client who, I can't remember what we were working on, but she was sort of saying, oh, it's all blue above me. And oh, I'm moving. And we went just briefly to a period where she was a dolphin. And it wasn't related to anything in the session, but she just needed to feel just that freedom, the joy and the movement of the dolphin. And she said, funny enough, I actually now do certain exercises for training my waist or something. And then after, I just allowed that for a few minutes, got the healing, got that experience, and after that we went on to whatever it was that we're doing. So, but yeah, I believe there's still a lot that we don't know.
Yeah, I sort of asked that question with that sort of answer in mind. Because, I believe like you, there's lots that's not explained, and it's all to do with energy or however the souls exist.
Yeah.
And that there can be a multiplicity, so that 10 people who are alive now might have all had that same past life.
Yeah, yeah, and it's even so. I haven't had, or not that I'm aware of myself, but I've heard of people like when you say the new souls. If we take them through a between life spiritual regression, they might still have past lives on Earth, but they're not actually theirs, they're borrowed. They're sort of tapping into the archetypical life of, even though they might not have actually lived that life themselves, it's still useful for them to learn and to feel that story, so they just borrow a life from somebody else. I know, but you wouldn't necessarily know that you did that because you still would feel.
It's all of this takes some.
I know it's
processing.
I know, absolutely.
So
I'm with you.
Yeah.
You had a question.
Walk-ins of what you're talking?
Oh, sorry.
A walk-in.
Walk-in. Yeah, Dolores Cannon talks about that. I haven't experienced any in my sessions, but yes, I believe it's possible. If one soul wanted to have the experience of being in the womb, being with that woman and in that family, but then for whatever reason then decide I don't want to be born and there's another soul, I believe it's possible. I haven't experienced it myself.
Effectively.
Yeah, a possession, but if it happens with mutual agreement, like, okay, I've had what I've wanted out of this life, I just wanted to be a fetus with this mother and have that connection, and I don't really want the rest of it, and you do want the rest of it, then if everybody's happy, why not?
Yeah, I know, I have a friend, and she said she's a walk-in, and she walked into the body when the girl was 6-7 years old, and this girl died. And she walked in, and then this child got saved somehow. She must have been completely different after this. So
I bet.
The parents could hardly recognize her.
Then, and I don't know the specifics. Obviously, then indeed it might be like a possession, but even. I've heard even with a possession, there's got to be some agreement on some level, because if none of me feel that is allowed, it's not going to happen. But if somehow on some level I'm okay with the whole thing, and
you're opening yourself up,
exactly.
Then,
so I believe that's quite rare. It does happen, I'm sure, but I haven't seen it in my practice. Yeah, you had a question, sir.
Yeah, I see life as this is a learning planet. So when we incarnate, whatever lesson or experience crops up in our life, that's what we've chosen to have in order to evolve and move on. So does that play out through your therapy sessions?
Definitely.
That everything happens for a reason. It's not, you've just got bad luck and you're just going to die. There's reasons for it.
Absolutely, there is such a thing as free will, because I might have decided, okay, this life I want to learn about tolerance, whatever, and for that it would be really good for me to travel to Australia, just giving an example. If still, me being here and now, if I actually don't want to travel, I still have the free will to say no. But yes, I personally do believe that things happen for a reason, and for me that's really liberating. Because it means I'm not a victim.
Well, it's all been chosen. So obviously,
and also I have chosen it, probably with the help and the advice of my team. But I don't believe there's a God or a being on a throne that says, okay, you will do this, you will be tortured, you will be this. No, it's me. I've decided.
But if like that, we choose our lessons and experiences, then guilt, blame, and shame can't be on the planet.
No.
Because if you've asked for an experience and someone said, "Oh yeah, I'll be your teacher," you can't then get to the other, put the boot on the other foot, and then say, "Well, you killed me, so therefore you've got to carry this guilt, blame, and shame for whatever."
Exactly.
But I think,
so
Peter,
there
that's
is
a
forgiveness.
human reaction as opposed to a spiritual reaction. That's
what
we've learnt while we're here, is to have that kind of reaction, the guilt, blame, and shame. Spiritually, we know better, but again, coming in without the knowledge.
If you dump that guilt, blame, and shame onto someone else,
but again, that's
whether they've asked for that experience, but actually, if it doesn't exist, you're dumping something onto someone that's completely stuffing their life.
But that's something, and again, it's a human reaction. And if somebody like that with lots of guilt or anger or whatever would do a session, they would get to realize. I often take people to the soul plans and say, okay, whose idea was this? Go to the time when it was agreed that you would be bullied, that you would be beaten, whatever it is, and whose idea was this? It's my idea. And that gets rid of any blame really, really quickly. If we can't get to that understanding, sometimes I take people to another past life in which the roles were reversed. So if we can't get any understanding, I can't understand why he would do this to me. Okay, go to another past life. And then very often they say, oh, now I'm the soldier, I'm the one with the gun or whatever it is. And say, yes. So indeed, it's like Dana said, I think that's from the 3D human perspective. It's I blame you. But in the session from the spiritual perspective, like me choosing that life of cruelty, the person at the time may have blamed the perpetrators, but as a soul I didn't. I understood.
So then that can be put in the subconscious, can't it? You know, like a comment that's put in, it goes into the conscious, then goes into the subconscious.
Yeah.
Then we have a fragment of something, like you say, something triggers it.
Yeah.
And you've been told that it's your fault, it's this, that and the other, and the subconscious goes, well, it's your fault. It's always your fault. So that's how it comes back out in the conscious.
Yeah.
Until you can
it aware,
without being aware.
Perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I personally feel that the more we're moving on and people are opening up more and more to spirituality as opposed to maybe religion or other concepts, is that we're opening up our mind, we're opening up our ideas, and maybe things like past life regression may become more common, more everyday, so that people can help to understand themselves, and maybe just might be one of the ways to address mental health, because people are carrying all this stuff from past lives. I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying this is how it is, but I think the more we open up, and what you were saying about the numbers of people that are coming in, that we are just beginning slowly. I mean, look at the people here tonight that are open enough to listen to this sort of conversation. And there's probably many more out there that didn't know about tonight's talk. But seriously, I think it's just about people are beginning to open up, and the more we do, we understand ourselves, and the better people we become. And we can move ourselves up to a higher dimension. Instead of being in this third dimension of blame, shame and so forth, just to lift our vibration would be wonderful.
And that's other work I do. I offer distance healing, indeed using that higher vibrational energy for people that are not able to come to me or have a session.
Right.
And it's to lift, to help make clear, to help heal. So I do that distantly as well for people. Any other questions from anybody? Yeah.
I'm just intrigued as how you actually got into this.
Sure, I did have something prepared about, and I was going to start off with that, but didn't have. Okay, So I started getting into regression in the mid-1990s, I think. I was living in Holland at the time. I'm originally from Holland. Been here 15 years on the island or so. But I went to, this lady did group weeks, so there would be like 8 people, and everybody would have a session every day, and everybody would see my session, and I would see the other people, so we would be frequently triggered by other people, and that would be either current life or past life or whatever. And I did that both as a client for several years, and also trained with her, but she wasn't an officially recognized person. And her way of working was very sort of cathartic. She used kinesiology, so she might say, okay, I test by arm testing that there's something happened when you were 4 and it's something to do with your dad, whatever. So we would often use Gestalt, we would use psychodrama, and we would use a holotropic breathing, the more in than out, and playing evocative music. And then we might start to be really sad or get really angry. And the way she worked was very sort of expressive, like we would beat the pillow, or we would cry or scream or whatever, just to express that. And that really helped me a lot personally. But what it didn't often give me the clarity. I would know, I'm feeling really sad and it's something to do with daddy or a past life, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And although it did help me, we did lots of dream analysis and stuff, and it did help me, but I was missing that clarity from her. Then we moved to the UK. I had my kids, went to university because I thought I wanted to have more sort of academic background. I trained at a short workshop with Dolores Cannon in that time. And then about 5 years ago, I think, I was just Googling or looking on YouTube, and I found this documentary called Why Regression, that's made by the European Association of Regression Therapists, EARTH, that I'm a member of as well now. And that really got me interested, rekindled my love of regression again. Through that, I got in touch with Andy Tomlinson, the director of the institute that I trained with. So I've trained hypnotherapy with him, regression, and between life spiritual regression, and the advanced vibrational therapy. And I've been practicing ever since. So, yeah. And yeah, I think there was another
when you meet people
now, where you might either feel you have an instant connection with them and you can't put your finger on it, or you have an instant hate towards someone and you don't know why. Does that often mean you've met them in a past life?
I'm inclined to think so, yes. And if it's not maybe that person, it's something that person reminds you of, like somebody else that also had green eyes, or somebody else that also wear a blouse like that. It could be either, but yeah, why not? And it would make sense. If, say, you and I had been sisters in another life, it would make sense that when we travelled again, that it would, and if we were close, that it would feel nice, and that we would recognise each other. So for me, that makes sense. Doesn't mean that it's always the case, but yeah, I believe certainly. Any other questions? No? Oh, yeah.
Can you ask when you're going to die?
I suppose you can in the Between Life Spiritual Regression. The thing is though, and I must say in all the sessions I've done, the spirit guides and the elders, they are really loving and compassionate. They don't tell you off, and even if they would, it would be in the most gentle way. I think if I was an elder, I wouldn't tell somebody when they were going to die, precisely for the reasons that we said. But maybe if it was important for you to know that, they might say, oh, you might want to look after your chest, or, put lots of sunscreen on, or whatever. They might give you some pointers. I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me.
Okay.
So what happens if you take your own life?
Yeah, that's the experts vary on that. What feels most, what resonates with me most is not the theory that people say, oh, it's frowned upon and taking your own life and it's pressure, you mustn't do that. I believe when people do take their own life, they get extra help because the team realise, well, actually, this person's just bitten off too much, and they would get extra help, extra healing, possibly more time in the between life space just to heal, and maybe next time they'll spend a little bit more time with that soul, making sure that they don't bite off too much, that it's more manageable, or they get more help. That's, for me, that feels nice, rather than they're going to be blamed for it. But I don't know.
Helping someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Someone else.
Yeah.
Or is it again chosen that way because they leave the legacy of how everyone down here moves on and what they think and how they react?
It might be a really selfless act. I'm doing this so that you guys can learn what it's like to lose somebody, or to blame yourself, or whatever it is.
Because I had a friend who meant what he was doing, but he didn't know where his heart was. And he stabbed himself. And he's no longer with us. He died naturally, may I add, in the end, and it was done so that he could give us this story. And I said to him, I said, but you stabbed yourself. It must have hurt. He said, no, I couldn't feel a thing.
Yeah.
God himself could have been stood in front of me. I would have still done it. But all I can tell you is I was already out of my body.
Yeah.
And all they had to do was find a way to switch the machine off. So I did not feel anything, and no one would have stopped me.
Yeah, that's what I've had.
And that's from someone who survived doing it, and that is and he worked in energies in the end. He was an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And he lived to be quite well. He died in his late 50s, but he did that in his 20s. But he taught so many people so many things. And he gave me that story when we were working together one day, and he said, I can share it with anyone. Because anyone who meets someone who's had someone close who's committed suicide, well, what could I have done? What couldn't I have done?
Yeah.
And that is the story that was to be told. So that person knew nothing.
So it was a life of service. And indeed, I didn't feel anything. I've had people, when they're saying I'm taking my own life, and it's not so much what I've found. It's not so much that they want to actually kill themselves. They just want the pain to stop.
Yeah, that's it. That's all he said. He just wanted the pain to end.
Yeah. And I just thought of another. Don't know what made me think about it, but regression therapy. It's amazing what can be done with it. Another. It was during the training. I was doing a session with a lady, and she is asthmatic? No. Hay fever. She's got really bad hay fever in this life. And that was resolved, or the reasons for the hay fever. There was 2 lives. One of the lives was her as a soldier in the battlefield dying, and breathing in the pollen. So for her, the pollen was linked to I'm a soldier and I'm dying in this battlefield and everybody else around me is dying. And another life that it was linked to was her as a witch, and she was being burnt at the stake, and there was other witches being burnt. And one of the witches at the time, I don't know if it was male or female, but was the son in the current life. And the son also had severe hay fever. And her, first of all, seeing that, maybe they were lovers in the life, I can't remember. But she was seeing the loved one that happening to her, and then after that having that happen to her herself. So we did lots of, again, that was the physical healing the eyes, healing the ears, healing the airways, of just having that, and then cutting the connection with that life. So from now on, pollen, it's just pollen. It's no longer linked to death, burning, pain, anguish. It's just pollen. And not only did she get healed from it, but also her son. She didn't even tell him about it, but just energetically. And it wasn't a proxy session, it was a session for her.
But it still
energetically, we're all one,
effect.
like we said in the meditation, we're all one, so we can all affect each other like that.
Thank you.